Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company
and Jim Coyle with you on this beautiful Friday to the Hard Truth Studios as the Friday edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio is on the way and underway, rolling. Lots to get to and talk about today ahead of this big-time sports weekend. Appreciate you being with us, no matter where and how you're listening, whether it's on one of our radio affiliates, 97.7 ESPN, The Ref, down on the river in Evansville in the southwest portion of the state, or up in the region on the voice of the region, 1230 AM, 104.7 FM, WJOB, or in Fort Wayne on Fort Wayne's sports station, 1380 The Fan. Be sure to keep it tuned to these stations all day. Just preset it on your radio. Just leave it there. You don't want to miss us. We'll be back again. So, and the great content that they have before and after. I know they've got some great stuff, whether it's Brian or Brett. They got all kinds of good stuff going on to keep it tuned to. Hello to everybody as well on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. People from all over. Appreciate you guys as well. It's going to be a fun weekend. Steven's got a question already. I'm going to wait to get through the monologue to get to that one. But it is a big weekend, no doubt. There is so much going on. And that just, of course, football. It all starts and ends with Indiana football. And yes, I did just say it all starts and ends with Indiana football on the same weekend that, although it's a scrimmage, Indiana basketball has an outing, but the attention is on football. That has never been the case. So it is now, and as it should be. It is more than deserving. Indiana taking on the Washington Huskies this week, and yet another Big Ten game in their attempt to go 8-0 and match the record of the 67 Rose Bowl team that started the season 8-0 before they lost, I believe, to Minnesota. They would still go on to have I think, a share of the Big Ten title, but this team's got lots more in store for it. I expect it to go 10-0. I expect them to break that record, but they've got to get through Washington first, and Washington is probably going to pose a more formidable to be a more formidable opponent than, say, Nebraska was. Washington has a better passing game without question, and I think they have a better running game. They have two individuals in Will Howard, their quarterback, that is high up in the stats, but as is their running back. But the thing is, they only average 24 points a game. So they are more of either a hit and miss offense or more of a methodical offense. That doesn't work I don't think that's going to work against a team that is allowing the second least amount of points in the Big Ten. Indiana scores the most points, not only in the Big Ten, I believe in the nation. At over 48 points per game still. And they're allowing is it down to 11? I'd have to I get the stats pulled up for that. I can't, but not many teams. What was, I'd have to go back and look last year and that last year's Michigan championship team, where Michigan may have been in those. But here's the irony. Maryland is, let's see, where's Maryland in the standings? How far down? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13th. 13th in the conference right now. At 1-3 and 4-3 overall. They're not a bad team. They're only two games away from bowl eligibility. We've got 5 games remaining in the season, and 14 Big Ten teams that are within 2 games of bowl eligibility. That's not bad. there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a group of 6 teams that are at 4-3 in the conference. They include Iowa, Michigan, Michigan State, Minnesota, Washington, Maryland, Rutgers. All those teams are 2 games away from bowl eligibility. Most will make it, some won't, depending upon their schedule. Indiana, Oregon, and Penn State, all undefeated. The Ducks and the Hoosiers at 7-0. Penn State at 6-0. Illinois at 6-1. They have a big game at Oregon this weekend. Hopefully, we'll get to talk about that with Jeffrey the Greek. But it's just going to be fun to watch this season play out. And the college football playoff, how that picture is going to roll. Indiana's going to have to, even though Indiana, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a story or whether it's written or online or on ESPN or Fox or anybody, without seeing a story, hearing a story about Indiana football right now or Kurt Signetti. They are everywhere. They're omnipresent, but yet still not getting quite the respect I think that they deserve for what they have accomplished. There are people that still, poo-pooing it a little bit. This week, the Big Ten matchups. Was this the 26th? Yes, sir. Rutgers goes to USC. USC, I assume they win that game at home, but man, you want to talk about they're 1-4 in the conference. Lincoln Riley, 1-4 in the Big Ten right now. Coming off of a loss at Maryland after leading by a couple of touchdowns at the half. Nebraska, after getting beat down by Indiana, their reward, they get to travel to Ohio State. I'll be interested to see a comparison in that game in what Ohio State does. Now, I don't know that they want to beat them as badly as Indiana did to maybe save a little something, show us, put some false thoughts into Indiana's heads. Who knows? Of course, Washington at Indiana, though, that's a noon game. Rutgers at USC, I mentioned, that game starts at 11 p.m. our time in the East Coast, Eastern time zone. Northwestern travels to Iowa for a 3:30 matchup. That's probably not going to be good for Northwestern. Maryland, following up their win at UCLA, they get to go to Minnesota, who Minnesota will probably win that. Illinois at Oregon, kind of an interesting game there. I don't think that Illinois has enough to beat Oregon, but I'm still not convinced Oregon is as great as what people are making them out to be. Ohio State should have won that game. They kind of screwed themselves a little bit. Then you have the penalty that the 12 men on the field that they purposely took that may have just made the difference in allowing Oregon to win that game. But that's huge now going forward because Oregon's schedule is pretty manageable. But this will be a test. Michigan State and Michigan. Is that the old brown jug? No, what? That's Indiana. What do I forget what they play for? Just bragging rights, if nothing else. It's in the big house. Michigan needs a get-right game, but Michigan State not playing bad. The game of the weekend in the Big Ten is Penn State at Wisconsin. Wisconsin started out pretty slowly, but man, they've seemed like Luke Fickell's squad has turned things around. They're rolling after starting the season with a couple of beatdown losses to Alabama and maybe USC. They have put up 126 points and given up 16 in their last 3 games, all wins, of course. So that's the slate of Big Ten games this week. But I was looking at the stats for the Big Ten. And, of course, Indiana leads not only Big Ten, they lead the nation in scoring, but in the Big Ten, they're second in points allowed. And let's see, where's the points for? Daggone it, they don't have that one on this. Unfortunately, they don't have that particular stat on here, which I would really like to see. But curious as to that one, what the exact was. I don't have Rob today, so we're flying solo. But yeah, it's going. Washington averages only 24 points a game. And while they do have the number one passing defense in the Big Ten, I believe, which with the switch in quarterback this week for Indiana, that could pose an interesting scenario. My selection in the Hoosier.com this week, I picked Indiana to win 40-17 because I don't think Washington is going to score on this Indiana defense a ton, as they haven't. But I also don't. I think that they might be able to slow down the Indiana offense, but I just don't think they can stop it because there's so many facets to it, rushing and throwing the ball. But inside of both of those, there are multiple weapons. But if they could get to Taven Jackson and make life a little difficult for him, that could alter things. We'll see. We shall see. But that's what we do. Hey, we've got lots coming up. I already got to take a break. Man, can't believe that. Coming to you from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios. We've got more coming up on the program today. Todd Leary's not going to be able to be with us, so we won't have him on. Baseball coach Jeff Mercer's joining us. They've got kind of a cool thing going on out at the ballpark, the Bart, this weekend. And if you've got some kids, you're going to want to take them out there. I could not get this thing to load to save my life, to show you, but it's called Boo at the Bart. Information, let's see. Nope, that's the Hoosier Ticket Project. Where the heck happened to my Boo at the Bart? Anyway, they're having Boo at the Bart. That's Indiana's baseball stadium, Bart Kaufman Field, but it runs 5 to 7 on Sunday. And the kids come out and trick or treat with the team. They wear their costumes and whatnot, but pretty cool opportunity. Of course, I'm going to be down in Knoxville for Indiana's tilt with Tennessee. We'll be bringing you coverage from there, since a lot of people won't be watching the game on TV, but we'll have all of the interviews afterwards and some probably post commentary. And let's see what else. Zach Osterman on the program today. Jeffrey the Greek will join us. We'll do some picks. Don't forget to get your college pick'ems in for the ISB college pick'ems. And John Gruden's going to be in town. And hopefully we're getting some cater. We're getting catered today from Shalubi's. I've got the order in, but I know they're backed up because of the big weekend. Major League Soccer looking at a fall and spring season, possibly. Did you know Zach Edey became the first NBA player since the ABA merger, which I believe that was like in 77? He became the first NBA player to foul out in his NBA debut in 15 minutes or less. That's a little, that's an ominous start. Hey, we've got more coming up here from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios. And of course, we're going to be back with all of that and more right after this.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios. This segment is brought to you by The Ugly Grouper.
Well, I hit the wrong one there, but that's okay. All right. All right, so I need to do this. And where are we? All right, there's that. And let me get back to, I know Stephen had a question, so let me get back to that. There we go. Why is everybody treating, I'm assuming it's Mike Woodson, within so bad because he lost Mullins? He'll pick up a better player probably in the portal next year. It's not, well, Stephen, I'll answer the question on air, but it's because, and I'm going to make some assumptions here because you're asking me why other people are reacting, but I'm going to assume it is because Bloomington is the blue blood in the blue blood of basketball states. It per capita produces more talent than any place maybe on the planet. And Indiana continues to lose out to other big time programs. Yeah, you can build a team in the portal, but you cannot build culture in the portal. There's no way to have continuity if you're portal diving. You don't know what you're going to get. And it's not like he's got to go get 5 recruits, just 2 to 3 max. But there's no way. Why is it that Kansas or UConn or Kentucky or Alabama or North Carolina or Duke, or do I need to go on and on and on? Why can these programs land the talent that they land, but yet Indiana in their own state with in-state players can't accomplish that? There you go. All right, we've got to get back going. I was late. Sorry about that, Rob. You can just cut that short. All right, so welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, here on this Friday. This segment brought to you by the Ugly Grouper and Hard Truth Studios. Hard Truth Distilling Company. Make sure you visit Hard Truth down in Nashville. 325 acres of beautiful rolling hills in Brown County, Indiana. Man, not a better place to be, except for the Bloomington campus this weekend. So we'll get to that. A couple of questions on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. Steve asks, why is everybody treating Mike Woodson with so badly because he lost Mullins? He'll probably pick up a better player probably in the portal next year. I just wonder why people are being so vindictive. I don't think they're being vindictive. And this is only an opinion because I'm speaking for people who I don't know exactly what's in their mind, but I can hazard a guess because Indiana is Indiana and they're in Indiana that produces per capita as much as talent as any place on the planet. And yet other schools like Duke, UConn, Kentucky, North Carolina, UConn, see, I mentioned UConn, whomever, are still able to land these kind of recruits in multiple, not just one. And you don't need 3 is an absolute max. I've said that before. Matt Painter, he is not going to be bringing in 5 recruits ever again. I would bet you, unless he signs 5 stars, he is not bringing in 5 guys ever again. It's too hard on the roster. But getting back to the question, you're in the state. He played in an era when it was, of course, it was different than what he's coaching, but this program was built on those types of players. Now, Indiana's also a national brand, and they should have the best players, period, so they can win. But the thing is, some of those players come from within the state. And the inability to land them, there is a reason. What that reason is exactly, again, I can hazard an opinion, but that's not anywhere near a fact. So they're going elsewhere for a reason. And yeah, it says you say you can just use the portal, but anybody can do that. If you've got the money, anybody can just use the portal. If you're not landing some of these guys, why are they not wanting to come play at Indiana? That's what begs the question. And if you can't look beyond that, then I think you might have anybody specifically, but youth in general. But if you can't look past that, then you might have blinders on. There's reasons why. Indiana should be killing it in recruiting. Now, yeah, I could see them not landing all the guys, but you just have to listen to the comments, read between the tea leaves, and it's obvious. And unless, again, some people can be biased unintentionally, and I get that. But that's why. Why would you want to, if you land the guy, you don't have to go into the portal, then you know what you have. Now you don't know what you're going to have next year. And secondly, how in the world can you have culture, which maybe that word is overused today, but I don't think so. You have the culture needs to be one of winning. I'm going to take a page out of Kurt Signetti's book. His culture is winning. When he was asked when he first got here, how does he sell his culture? What did he say? I win. Google me. He has personality. I think that carries over. My honest opinion, and this is nothing personal against anybody, but Mike is a very easygoing guy. Very, very easygoing. Nothing wrong with that. But I think it also shows that lack of energy, that lack of, I use Rick Pitino as an example. This guy is in his 70s and stalks the sidelines like he's a madman. And God, you got to love that. The passion, the ferocity that always. And I believe that's how practices are for them. It's that energy, but that energy carries over when you meet people, when you talk to people. It's infectious. There's not a lot of energy there. And Indiana they're in the finals of all of these guys, but they're not sealing the deal. They're not closing the sale. And some of the time, I think that Indiana is in it just out of courtesy. If they weren't the home school the home state for Braylon Mullins, I'm not sure that they were in it. You got to get kids' names right. I think that also shows a lack of attention to detail. You can't call them by the wrong names. But that's just my opinion on that. No, I'm not going out on a limb and saying, hey, beating a drum on something. That's just a question that was asked, and I gave it. But They've got a hell of a team this year. Indiana should win the Big Ten without question. No question about it. They should win the Big Ten. We've got to take our first break so I don't get too far behind. Or no, I already did that, didn't I? I got confused because of the false start early on. John Gruden's coming to town. A lot of people may not care. I'd love to have him on the show. I mean, I know he went through a lot of stuff, but hey, you know how on College Game Day they always bring the food out to the – I was thinking, boy, I may get some slack on this, but where is the food going to come from here? I grew up in southern Indiana, very close to Louisville. Louisville has a ton of great restaurants, all kinds of different great things to offer. And I'm thinking, okay, well, where's the food here going to come from? Yeah, there's a great steakhouse in town, and maybe there. But other than there and the grill, and there's the couple of places there at the top of Kirkwood right off of College, a couple of nice restaurants, but there's just not I don't think there's a lot of variety in that regard. But I do wonder, will Shalubi's be bringing, will they bring the food? Slop some sandwiches down there? Look it up. Purdue goes to Creighton to play basketball. In Indiana going to Tennessee. You know, I've been thinking about that down when they get to the Bahamas. Louisville's no joke. 13 new players, but they are no joke. Russell says that he was surprised to hear Mullen said Coach Walsh did a great job, but Hurley worked harder. Woody, where were you? Walsh going up against Hurley. Well, and I'm not saying Brian, he's a great guy. Why that he didn't do a great job. I know he's working hard, but you're exactly right. It should not be. That's not how it should be. Sometimes it works, though. I can tell you one thing. They got outworked on Trent Sisley 3-1, as I've said numerous times. Didn't matter. But sometimes you get things just going in your favor. Derek says he likes, he feel like Schwarber on game day tomorrow, along with the personality of McAfee, is going to be awesome. Oh, it will be. It will be. First of all, it's going to be awesome tomorrow anyway. I think Pat McAfee is just going to love the fact that he's home. Lee Corso with the homecoming. Yes, you are correct. FIU was more formidable than Nebraska. They held Indiana to the lowest point total this season in that first game with just 31. But it's going to be an absolute raucous time. If you thought Big Noon Kickoff was something, and no, nothing against Big Noon Kickoff. It's great deal. But College Game Day is the Mac Daddy. 37 years strong. Lee Corso homecoming. 79 Holiday Bowl winning team. And while I'm thinking about that, oh, so sad that the former quarterback for that team, Tim Clifford, passed away just a couple of days ago. And it's just a very, very sad thing. You know, right before all of this is coming to be and happening, he led that victory. He was also the 1979 Big Ten Most Valuable Player in that leading Indiana to that 38-30-7 improbable win over previously undefeated BYU in that Holiday Bowl. Some things said about him. He was a great leader, but the thing about it, he never once lost his cool. He was a cool customer. That came from then Coach Lee Corso. Clifford completed over 53% of his passes from 77 to 80, over 4,000 yards, then the most in program history with 30 touchdowns and 31 interceptions. He was a 10th round draft pick by the Bears in 81, but never took an NFL snap. He was scheduled for heart surgery this week, but he passed away on Wednesday. He had hoped to be part of the team's 45-year reunion when the Hoosiers host Washington this weekend, but unfortunately and sadly, that's not going to happen. So really tough timing, a tough loss for Indiana football, especially with all that's going on. So our thoughts and prayers with the Tim Clifford family. Is it's just sad overall, but thinking of him. And what a great one. And I'm sure he will be thought of greatly tomorrow when all of the celebration is going on. They will be thinking about him and pointing to him in the sky, which is a great thing. Let's see. Yes, for those that didn't know, Schwarbs is the guest game day picker. Doug, great to see you guys. Nice to meet Chase last night as well. Saw 2/3 of my Eminem and Eminem crew. Marley couldn't be there, but I still just call it the Eminem and M crew. Great group of kids. Let's see. What else we got here on the question line? Ed thinks that Penn State gets their first loss this weekend at Wisconsin. You know what? It's possible. The way Wisconsin is playing that offense, this is going to be a big matchup between Wisconsin's offense and Penn State's Tom Allen defense, which has been very good since the beginning of the season, since they got through those first couple of games. USC should have beaten Penn State. I agree, but they didn't. Ohio State should have beaten Oregon, but they didn't. So there's that. I agree with you. The pollsters in Vegas not giving Indiana a lot of respect. The line this week for the Indiana-Washington game is 6.5, and I'm like, I don't expect them to. I don't expect them to hit the 40-point mark. Now, I would if Curtis Rourke was in there, and who knows? That may not be the case, but I still think they win 38-17. Chris asking, is, in my opinion, any chance that Rourke plays against Washington on Saturday? Signetti said he was doubtful in his coach's show last night. Yeah, I was there. And I kind of chuckled when he said that because I'm like, yeah, he's doubtful, all right. He ain't playing. No, I think that they believe that they can get by Washington, which no slight to Washington, but I think that they can manage, especially after the performance David Jackson put on last week. And that's all they have to do. Just win the game. Win the game. You don't have to beat them to death like you've beaten everybody else. It'll put a hit on their stats a little bit, maybe, but who knows? Maybe this train keeps rolling just like it has been, because it's not. The running game is great. It's going to be a challenge to see what Washington's pass defense does, and if it puts Taven Jackson in any compromising positions of forcing him into any errors, that's the biggest thing. You can't turn the ball over. Especially even against a team like Washington, you can't turn the ball over. You can't have a four turnover game again like you did against Maryland, although they gave up 0 points, which was pretty damn impressive. That may be one of the most impressive things of the year, as a matter of fact, to give up 4 turnovers and not be able to worry about losing a single point. That doesn't happen very often. Looking forward to getting some of our guests on today. We started out with 5 guests scheduled for today, and man, things started happening. Todd couldn't make it, which I was looking forward to talking to him ahead of this Tennessee matchup on Sunday. Tennessee not quite what they were last year. They lost some big-time pieces. But Indiana, it's going to be interesting to see Indiana against someone besides Indiana and to see how they put the offense together, how they're going to run with Malik and Umar Ballo, how they're going to run without Ballo in the lineup, what these guards look like, what the wings do. I think the wings are going to be pretty daggone important to Indiana this year. And I think that, and mark this one down, Luke Goody is going to be a much more vital piece than people think, without question. I just think that his shooting overall is going to be something that plays a big part into whether or not Indiana has success this season, without question. Let's see. Trying to get down on the Andy Moore Honda hotline to see if we've got any more. It's hard for me to pick all these up while doing all of this, but 1380 a.m. in Fort Wayne, the Fan said Nebraska would beat IU last week. Yesterday, they predicted every game in the Big Ten except the Washington-Indiana game. Well, who there did that? And see, and nothing again against anybody specifically, but when people that don't actually cover a team, it's harder when you're not around the actually around the program, when you're not actually putting in more research and more understanding. You get caught by relying on the old Indiana, because surely by now people realize that's gone. That's gone. I saw Kurt Signetti was on Steven Van SVP last night, and he's the same every interview. I mean, he is talking about consistent, talks about the standard, talks about everything that they do, and because they are machine-like. Watch them. They're a machine-like. But that's because Kurt Signetti approaches this machine-like. And by machine-like, I mean you have to have all of the parts acting in concert, thinking in concert. And they do. But I noticed that the first time I sat down with the players at the Big Ten football media days, they all were talking the same language. And it was quickly apparent. Ooh, these guys, they're there together. And they are. And it matters. When you have an entire football team on the same page, an entire team of guys that have chips on their shoulders, yeah, you think that doesn't make a difference? Heck yeah, it does. We've got to take a pause for the cause. From the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios, we've got a lot more coming up from the Hard Truth studios. Looking forward to talking it up today with our buddy Zach Osterman, Jeffrey the Greek, and Coach Jeff Mercer, hopefully joining us here next. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after we take this break.
This segment is brought to you by Boost Fundraising. We'll return to the Hard Truth Studios for more with Jim Coyle right after these messages.
Coach, are you with me? All right. What did I say? 40, 43. And then do. Sorry, I can't see the comments right now. Peeps, I'm over in a different page because I am solo producing today. Hate it. Hate that.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33. We'll return to the Hard Truth Studios for more with Jim Coyle right after these messages.
Well, that wasn't the right one. Hope we can get that taken care of. But welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, here on this, I'd love to say beautiful Friday. It looks nice when you look outside the studio, but I heard that there is a chance for showers today, which not tomorrow, fortunately, but today, you know, all the things that are going on with college game day, we've got interviews to do out there with those guys as well, and the students are lined up. I'm sure they've been in line since last night, probably camping out to get the spots in the pit. And hey, they want to be one of the guys that gets a shot at some of Pat McAfee's money. 90 grand, $90,000 up for grabs if you can boot a 33-yard field goal, which doesn't sound like that difficult, but it's not that easy. You cannot be a former or current college athlete. There's that. So it's been fun to watch. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But Jeff Mercer, Indiana baseball coach, set to join you here in a little bit. Had a confusion on time, but that's okay. Looking forward to that. Talking about, and we'll catch up with him. But like I mentioned earlier, for those of you that live in the area, the Bloomington area, Boo at the Bart happens on Sunday out of Bart Kaufman Stadium, the baseball stadium for the Hoosiers, as they will have your opportunity to take your kids out there in their costumes. They can trick or treat with the baseball team, with the players, coaches. Kind of a cool thing. Did not know that was going on, but just pretty cool to see that. It's just something unique. So much going on the IU campus this week. Again, with college game day in town. Today, there's just a ton of stuff that goes on with it. And then tomorrow, of course, it will be absolutely bedlam as the Hoosiers fans, students are lining up in that pit. I don't know how many people they can get in there because of the limited space of where it's set up, which that kind of, that it would be nicer if they had more green, but they don't, not where they're going to be, but it'll look cool. It's going to be a hell of a raucous environment. There's no question about that. So looking forward to that. I mentioned John Gruden will be in here as well. Indiana takes on Tennessee on Sunday in a preseason scrimmage, as it's called. Not sure exactly what that means, but I guess I'm wondering, were they going to keep score? What I don't know exactly what the format is going to be. I'll know when I get there. And it is going to be on ESPN Plus. So you'll have to grab that from there if you need to. A lot of people are going to not watch the game, I assume, but because they don't have that, don't want to get it. I get it, because it's not a real game. And I don't know how much you're really going to get out of it. I don't know how much we're going to get out of it. I would rather not be driving 10 hours on Sunday after today is going to be an unbelievably long day. Tomorrow is going to be an even longer day. And then 10 hours of driving on Sunday. No, I can honestly tell you, I am not looking forward to that. But it is what it is. If you want to watch the game, I believe you just have to have ESPN Plus. But you could always add it and drop it in the same day if you want. Or, pay just the 1 month, however. But it unofficially begins on Sunday with the exhibition against Tennessee. Again, this does not count towards anything. It's just a way to get things going. But Tennessee, currently in the preseason, ranked number 12. So Indiana, number 17. It's a 3 p.m. contest down there in Knoxville and Thompson Bowling Arena at Food City Center in Knoxville, where the Vols are coming off of a big-time football win last week. But the SEC Network Plus, which is ESPN Plus, basically, is how you watch that. If you don't have it, it'll cost you $11. But think about this. You're going to spend that in gas and fuel if you're just driving locally to a game. You're going to spend that on food if you're at a game. More than that, if you're at a game. That's how I always look at things. I know everyone is being hit here and there all the time, but it's just nothing is free. It costs to produce, it costs to do this, and as long as you can get stuff for a reasonable price. Now, however, you can listen to the Fish. I asked Don last night if he was going down, and said that he was. So they will be broadcasting from down there, along, of course, with Eric Sewer, John Herrick. Indiana leads the all-time series with Tennessee. They've only played 4 times. 4-0 is the record. All of those matchups took place between 67 and 85. Most recently happened 74-67 in the semifinals, all the way back in the 1985 NIT at Madison Square Garden. Uwe Bob led the Hoosiers with 24-10. Steve Alford had 23. But it's been a long time since these two guys have met. That's basically 40 years. Holy cow. It's a long time. Tennessee did lose Dalton Connect and his 22 points a game. He's currently with the Lakers. They lost Jonas Adu, his 11-plus points per game. He transferred to Arkansas. Josiah Jordan-James, another over 8-point scorer per game. He graduated. Santiago Vescovi graduated. And a lot of guys transferred to Arizona. Another transfer to Longwood. Transfer to Penn State. So it's a different lineup that you're going to see. But Indiana's got a completely different lineup for the most part as well. And we'll see how it works. What are your thoughts? I mean, everything's just a guessing game. I haven't seen Indiana play. I mean, that stuff at Hoosier Hysteria doesn't really count. I haven't seen Tennessee play. They're not the same as last year. So You always have that. Looking forward to talking to Coach Mercer today, as well as Zach Osterman, about this weekend's activities. And we're going to go ahead and take a break. Zach's in the green room waiting, and we'll get to him as we'll head out. Take a break. Pause for the cause from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios. We'll be back with more after this.
This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East. We'll return to the Hard Truth Studios for more with Jim Coyle right after these messages.
Hello, Zach.
Hey, how we doing?
Good, brother. How are you? I still can't get over that text you sent me second. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm
shocked by that timing. I'm like, oh my gosh. Then I saw he was supposed to get heart surgery on Wednesday, or hoping to get heart surgery on Wednesday.
I didn't know that, but
I just read that.
It's very sad.
The timing is just crazy. Let me switch this. And nope. Geez, this is going to be a busy day, huh?
It's going to be a busy weekend.
Yeah. I talked about that. I said, I am not looking forward to today's going to be a pretty long day. Tomorrow's going to be an extraordinarily long day. And then Sunday is going to be worse. Are you going to Knoxville, or is Mike?
Mike is. I'm just because of how just because of like how much we're going to work tomorrow, and then obviously, ideally, one of us needs to be here, kind of bright-eyed Monday when we're the other for press conference and everything, because the season does not end on Saturday. So we just got to keep going along.
I hear that. All right. I'm just going to jump back in because I don't remember where I left. I don't have a producer today, but he can edit it together. Let's see. We're back in after that. So
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios. This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indie Homes Pro Teams by Cheryl Sizemore.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Friday, a big-time Friday. Zach Osterman, the IU Insider, beat writer for the Indy Star, joining me now. And Zach, it is a back-to-back huge weekend on the Indiana campus. Nothing we've ever seen. I mean, there's no comparison here. There is nothing for us to compare what has become a I don't want to call it a marketing juggernaut, but Indiana under Curt Cignetti, and Curt Cignetti himself, is the absolute darling of the college football world on SVP last night. And he has a great rapport with these guys. They love him in so many ways because he's brash, but he's doing what he said he was going to do, and he's cool with them when they have him on, and that's not always the case. I mean, sometimes you have to, and as well, how hard it can be sometimes to get stuff from a subject. Curt Cignetti is not that guy.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, it's hard for us to get it from him sometimes.
Yes. I do agree. Yes, those guys.
No, I mean, I think the thing with Cignetti that is probably as true as anything is he's never just tried to sort of varnish like who he is, and I think that endeared people to him when he was at James Madison. I think about some of the conversations I've had with IU players about the impressions he made on them, quickly, and the extent to which sort of everything he said, everything he promised, everything he made, everything he sort of, I don't know, made them promise, for lack of a better way of putting it, was all stuff that, that he kind of delivered on in the end. And, listen, I mean, this is obviously all gone about as well as anyone could have hoped for. And at some point it's going to stop, like not just in the sense of, oh, this is fake, but like nobody wins the way Indiana's winning forever. That is just the nature of college football. But I think Cignetti has seemed very at home in his skin and in his ability to ride this wave, just being who he is. And I don't think he makes, he's said multiple times that I don't think he was really kidding, that he's too old to worry about what people think. And he just kind of, he lets his own, whatever his sort of position is on anything at any given time, he's not afraid to sort of let fly.
Yeah, he is, and you mentioned something that is very accurate. He is very different with the local, what I'll call the local media, as opposed to some of the national guys, which, and I understand there's an understanding of why there. But I've also picked up on some things. I know that when he joined me on the show at Big Ten Football Media Days, I told him, I said, Coach, I said, I see a direct path to a 6-0 start for this team. And, he wanted nothing to do with it. But then I heard him talking to someone else here recently, and he acknowledged that he saw that and saw that early on as well. And then last night when he was on with SVP, he asked pretty much the same question I asked a while back. And I remember you pointing it out about, wouldn't he have to agree that, even him, that this is a pretty damn good start? And didn't really want to acknowledge it. Well, SVP kind of asked him the same thing last night. He basically said, Scott, I can't do that. So he really works hard to maintain this sharpened edge, to stay humble and hungry. And this team speaks as if they're one. And that's another thing I noticed from day one at IU Football Media Days, Zach, is the guy, when I talked to the players, they were all speaking the exact same language from day one.
I think that probably is kind of a, for me anyway, that is sort of a combination of validation of Scott Dolson's decision to go for someone with an established track record. And, I mean, it's funny, and I'm kind of going to get off topic on my own answer here, forgive me, but I think everyone was so roundly impressed by Indiana's ability to pull Curt Cignetti from James Madison that we did forget, and I'm not taking anything at all away from Curt Cignetti, please understand, but like, I do think it got glossed over fairly quickly that Indiana was taking a head coach whose last experience at the FBS level was 13 years prior, and who had never been a head coach in the FBS in any capacity, whose experiences, were really formed from a head coaching perspective, at the lower levels. And I think Indiana had supreme confidence in Curt Cignetti. I think Indiana had to do a good job of selling itself to Curt Cignetti. I think Cignetti had earned the right to be one of those coaches that says, you have to court me as much as I have to court you. But, it was still, Indiana taking a chance in a certain way. And I'm not exactly sure, forgive me, how I've gotten out onto this diving board. But it's been a long week. It's been a very long week. But I do think in general, there just kind of has been a very sort of serendipitous alignment of what Indiana had built in the 10 to 12 years before it hired Curt Cignetti, what it had achieved. I've kept coming back to that quote he had at Media Day where he said, people say I can't win at Indiana, yet 3 years ago, Indiana was one score away from a Big Ten title game. So it can't be both. It can't be a program with promise, but also forlorn. It's got to be one or the other. And a coach that was at the right sort of intersection in his career to take this path and had kind of proved it, everywhere else from the ranks on up. And now obviously is getting an opportunity to prove it at the Power 5 level. And it's making a pretty big difference. Absolutely.
And I'm wondering now what this recruiting class is going to be like, because he is obviously turning everyone's head. And just having Byron Baldwin at the game last week offered something. Normally, whenever you get a guy that decommits, and they'll always say, but I'm still going to consider, X, whether it's Indiana or whomever, that never happens. But immediately he's at an IU game. They're keeping his attention. And I might be surprised if they don't end up landing him again, which I'm sure I know it's happened. I don't remember that happening, but I also think that they may end up flipping Tyrone Burgess, an Indianapolis kid who committed to Louisville. But the recruiting, he's doing this with guys that had half of his roster had no stars coming out of high school. Zach, what's it going to be like when they have these 4 and Indiana's first 5-star recruits?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're still going to see them go, pretty heavy on the portal. I think Julian Lewis is a good example. Dylan Raiola, at least in theory, is in the shoes that or in the position that Lewis would be in, whether he came to Indiana or anywhere else. And it's worth saying Raiola is like 6'3", 220. Julian Lewis is, I think, 6'1", about 180, 190. And obviously he'll get bigger as he matures and he gets to college. But my point is, like, I suspect Curt Cignetti, a big part of his strategy, whether it be a quarterback or anywhere else, is going to be to remain pretty veteran wherever he can. And the portal allows you to do that. And you got to get it right. You got to identify the right kids, and you've got to distribute your NIL resources effectively and all those sorts of different things. But the undercurrent sort of message or vibe that I get from Curt Cignetti is he has confidence in himself and his staff to work the portal well. And, if he's here long enough and they have enough recruiting success, there may come a time where they don't need to be quite as portal focused, where they have more of these guys coming up. But, you go back and look at, some of the classes that are about to turn into the junior and senior classes at Indiana. There are not a ton of those guys still around. And, we can have a whole separate conversation about what went wrong with individual players, but the fundamental point is I think Indiana is, at least in my opinion, is still going to be in a position where it's going to, even if it does, flip some of these guys, it's still going to be in a position where its priority is staying old and staying veteran where possible. And as we've talked about before, and I'm sure you've talked about with other people too, this team's going to lose a lot. That Indiana was intentional about when it went in the portal, recruiting veterans. And what that meant was getting a lot of guys that only have 1 or 2 years left. And so, next winter, again, you're going to have a couple running backs to replace. You're going to have some wide receivers to replace. You're going to have a quarterback to replace. However you want to do that. Do you want to do that with a promising freshman and you let Taven Jackson take the reins? Do you want to go in the portal? Who knows? You're going to have to replace Mike Kadick, obviously. We can get to the other side of the ball, and there's some pieces Indiana's going to have to replace there as well. Linebacker, I think safety. So my point is, it's it's fine to be excited about high school recruiting, and ultimately the best programs are still drawing a lot of their foundation in their roster from high school recruits that they then, develop from the ranks on up. But I don't think a program like Indiana is ever going to stop really prioritizing the portal and prioritizing a certain need to be veteran and experienced at, most positions. So I'm not saying don't be excited about high school kids, guys that Indiana flips, guys that Indiana signs, whatever, commits and then signs. But there is another piece of this that is not, necessarily it's not a, I wrote something about this after Braylon Mullins committed to UConn. The portal's not some sort of like plan B. Like it's not a sort of the last act of a desperate man. That is how you build a roster anymore, if you can. And Indiana certainly looks like it can, and I expect that it will.
Speaking of Mullins, that was my next thing to bring up. And recruiting, Indiana basketball. I know most of the fans are upset that they lost out on Braylon Mullins on the heels of losing out on Jalen Harrelson. They did land Trent Sisley, of course, one of the three. But they're still. Is Indiana just going to be a portal built team? Because they've just not been able to get a foothold on getting the elite of in-state guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think what was different about this class was this was the first time that it felt like Indiana under Mike Woodson really, really focused in on some in-state guys. Like I know they recruited Xavier Booker, but that never felt like a priority the way that, not just Braylon Mullins or Trent Sisley or Jalen Harrelson felt like a priority, but the way that Derek Queen felt like a priority, or the way Liam McNeely felt like a priority. And we can have a conversation about the merits of that and whether they should have. But my point is, I think their own evaluation was, not to go as all in on that recruitment as some others. So I think there is a bit of this that is, probably just the experience of watching Indiana miss some in-state this is the first time. I mean, Sisley will be the first signee from the state of Indiana that Indiana got out of high school that Woodson did not inherit as a recruit. The only other prep player he signed from Indiana has been CJ Gunn, who he recommitted after the coaching change. Obviously, he's added some in-state players via the portal, but that's going to be a little different. You're never going to be better for not having Jalen Harrelson or Braylon Mullins. I know, again, it's been a long week and it's nowhere near over. You're not going to be better for not having guys like that. I do think that it feels more and more like Indiana's recruiting philosophy essentially just boils down to, Indiana's going to want a couple kids every class that it feels like fit its developmental process. Kids that might, I don't think anybody's a 3 or 4 year player anymore. You're always re-recruiting your roster, but kids that you could see being a part of your program for multiple years, helping set your culture, helping kind of run your locker room and all those things. But then for the most part after that, it's either elite high school kids or it's portal players. And I think the message there, again, the unspoken message is it's players that can come in and contribute right away. And Indiana will develop them. Mike Woodson will make them better, but I don't think he wants a team of projects. I don't think he looks at it and says, I want to sit here and I want to go through 2 full recruiting cycles of guys that are going to come in and I'm going to coach them from the bottom up. And, and the thing is, I think part of the reason he thinks that way is because he doesn't have to. And 10, 12 years ago, you did. And I wrote a lot about this in my insider off Mullins' decision to go to UConn. 10, 12 years ago, we treated transfers, they sort of wore a scarlet letter. The even if there was nothing nefarious perceived behind it, there was almost sort of this unspoken inference. I guess most inferences are unspoken, that if you had to transfer, it was because you made some sort of mistake in your recruiting process. And if a team had to take you, it was because they made some sort of mistake in their recruiting process. And so you both needed this sort of marriage of convenience. That's completely changed since the portal. And I think we're still coming to grips with that. I really do, because, we have 100 years of not case law, but I guess precedent is probably the word, around NCAA policy, limiting, in a lot of cases, severely limiting, when and how and why players can transfer, and what the opportunities are around a transfer versus the costs and so forth. Now, we've gone from like 100 years of one thing to like 6 years of another. And it was just a night and day change in terms of how transfers are perceived and pursued in college athletics. And so if you have a program like Indiana that's fairly NIL rich, and my perception is Indiana has one of the better overall NIL apparatuses in the country, financially speaking, then you are going to look at the portal and say, why do I need to give myself too many players to develop again from maybe the ground up, when I could go get ready-made players, guys that have 2-3 years of experience already in the portal. And then you can look at the elite high school players and you can say, okay, but these guys, like a Jalen Hood-Schifino as an example, the skill level is just so high already. There's a lot that fits them quickly into the system. And then we develop what needs developed, like Mackenzie Mbako's defense a year ago. And I think there will always be some room for guys that, again, I think we could all agree, if they stay around, are 3 or 4 year players, like a Gabe Cupps, like a Ja'Kai Newton, like a Trent Sisley. But number one, again, you're always re-recruiting your roster, and this idea that you can just look at players now and say, oh, he's going to be here for 4 years, that it doesn't work that way anymore. And number two, if you don't give yourself too many of those, then it's more likely that you're going to be able to successfully develop the ones you do recruit, if you understand what I'm saying. If you give yourself less work to do as a coach, as a staff, from a developmental perspective, with guys who are going to need a little bit more time or a little bit more work. And listen, we'll see where Trent Sisley gets up to. He seems to be playing really well down at Montverde. It's early in the fall. Let's not cast Trent Sisley unfairly. We may well get to March and find out he's been going against elite level competition and thriving. But my point is, you really do just have to think of your roster year to year anymore. And if you're going to do that, then yeah, you would rather have players that are going to take a lot less work to be ready-made for, how you're trying to win basketball games.
Absolutely. Zach Osterman with the Indy Star. We will see you this weekend, my friend.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, as always.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Zach Osterman, the IU Insider for the Indy Star. Make sure you're giving him a follow. Keep local papers alive. Be a subscriber. Hey, we've got more coming up. Jeffrey the Greek joins us next. Get some Big Ten picks, thoughts on the state of the college football playoffs and the Big Ten, and much more when we come back from these messages.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33. We'll return to the Hard Truth Studios for more with Jim Coyle right after these messages.
Oh, my God. I didn't think that one was going to end. I mean, Zach is great. He's so much knowledge.
Dude, when does he breathe? When does he get oxygen?
He's got a lot of knowledge in there. Maybe he breathes through his ears.
Dude.
Oh, I got to get PD up
Oh,
there.
man.
Let's
I
see.
sent your guy Rob a logo if you want to get it from him.
Yeah. Well, no, I've got it. Hold on. I've got to get this ready to play.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company Studios. This segment is brought to you by Pave Drain Stormwater's arch enemy,
Wow.
Huh?
Look at that.
Huh?
Nice.
That's got to play through now. And
Okay.
Rob, if
I'm
you're
gonna record
listening,
this.
I know you are. This is not the comeback. I'm just letting this play. I'll replay it when we come back. I don't know when I broke, unfortunately. So you're
That's
going to
all right.
have to just, well, I know I'm talking to my producer who's not even with us right now, but when he listens to this, he's going to have to
Okay.
understand. You're just going to have to edit the 3 minutes in there because I don't know when I.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it.
See, I got to get that logo up there. Where up there? There we go. There we go. And then got down here. Where is the welcome back paved drain?
I don't think I have your email.
It's just Indiana Sports Beat at gmail.com.
Okay.
All right, we can go anytime. I don't know when I took a break.
Oh, there we go.
All right, you ready, Freddie?
You bet.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios. This segment is brought to you by Pave Drain Stormwater's arch enemy.
Or Jeffrey the Greek. I need to have an effect there. Jeffrey the Greek.
Yeah. That'd be cool.
Jeffrey, join us. It's better, man. We missed you for a couple of weeks. It's not the same. It's Friday. It's not Friday without Jeffrey the Greek, man. We gotta make picks. We've got to talk some football. There's so much going on. Of course, we'll talk about Indiana, but the Big Ten, there are a lot. The college football playoffs, I do not see anyone past Indiana having a shot. The four. Indiana, I think everyone's going to say Indiana's the bottom of that four, but I think that they are now. That's unless Illinois does the unthinkable and goes to Oregon and knocks them off this weekend, which would be an upset, but not an absolute stunner. They have talent, they have offense, they have defense. So we'll see. I don't know what would be more stunning, Illinois beating Oregon or Wisconsin beating Penn State, because I see that as the tastiest matchup because Wisconsin has been scoring like lights out, like 126-16 over the last 3 games or something.
Right.
Penn State does not score a lot of points.
Well, they got one of the higher ranked offenses for yardage and points per game, so they're doing okay. It's funny that you compare those two games because on the Eyes on Big podcast on all platforms, please give us a listen. We let the fans on Twitter pick the game of the week. They chose Illinois and Oregon, which is the only ranked game. On the podcast, though, Jordan and I said if it was up to us, we probably would have chose Penn State, Wisconsin as the game of the week.
That's a more tasty. I think that there's a bigger chance for an upset in that game. It's at Wisconsin, for one thing.
And a much lower spread. I mean, we're talking 3 touchdowns to 1 touchdown in the 2 games. As far as the one in Eugene, a lot of things are going to have to fall into place. Obviously, that would be a gigantic win for Illinois. And back to the original part of the conversation, I'm not saying that would make Illinois a shoo-in for the college football playoff, but I tell you what, it would be really hard to keep Illinois out should they win this game tomorrow in Eugene. I don't see it happening. But if they did, now we have got 5 teams in the Big Ten that we have to talk about for the college football playoffs. So you bring up a good point. Switching into Madison, much closer game. It is funny, Jim, how much these games and teams change just in the matter of a week or two. Because 2 weeks ago, I would not have given Wisconsin hardly a shot in Hades to ever pull off this win versus Penn State, but boy, have they looked better the last couple weeks. we haven't seen Penn State really put a great full game together. So suddenly now Wisconsin being at home, an amped up crowd in the evening, there is a very realistic chance that Wisconsin could pull this off.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Wisconsin started off. I was wondering about Luke Fickell. I'm like going, he
right.
may end the season on the hot seat, but then all of a sudden, now they had a nice little healthy serving of get right game after get right game after get right game.
Yeah, yes,
with some of these teams, but people like to say that about Indiana. I'm like, when you're just destroying people, that's crap.
Different.
And they've been destroying people.
Let's talk about the Hoosiers, man. Come on, this is the story.
Man. It's been amazing, as you can imagine, because you're an Iowa guy. You've seen that stuff happen, and actually for so long they have had so much sustained success. I don't know that something like this could even happen there, but this is going from 0 to 100 like
amazing.
That. And you've got Big Noon kickoff in last week and College Game Day this week. Where does that happen?
It's insane. My joke that I'm saying to everybody is the Indiana Hoosiers, as in WHO''S, meaning who's that guy making a play now? Who's this guy making a play? Like every time the ball is in somebody's hand and something good to happen, it's a different dude that's making the plays. So that's what I think has been one of the most incredible thing about this Indiana team this year is not only did it come out of quote unquote nowhere, but all the different guys that are contributing. Now, I just want to say there is nothing more cruel than sports in general, college football, because, you got Curtis Rourke, has done, I've always loved this guy ever since, he's been playing in the MAC and Ohio, comes over to Indiana, bets on himself, gets his, team in the position they're in right now, not by himself, don't get me wrong. And then one of the biggest moments of his entire life, game day in town. This is a big game against an opponent that deserves respect. And the guy, hurts his thumb and he can't play in the game. I just got to say, I feel horrible for the guy that he can't play on Saturday.
Yeah, it does stink because I would not only that, he was just starting to make some headway in the Heisman conversation.
Right.
Not that he has a chance to win the Heisman. He does not. I don't care if Indiana goes 12-0. They'll talk about him more. They'll blow him up some. But let me tell you, it's either going to go to Genty from Boise State or
Dylan Gabriel would be
Miami
up there.
Does. See, Dylan Gabriel. And he's not having as good a year as Curtis Rourke. I
don't know if I would, in a world where if he can come back, if Rourke can come back and have a Heisman moment versus Ohio State, he would be firmly in the conversation. To be able to say, people were predicting Indiana to have 4.5, 5 wins this year. If they were somewhere sitting at 11-1, 12-0. In the Big Ten championship race, I don't know how you keep the guy out at that point. Like somebody needs to be rewarded for Indiana's success past Signetti. And he deserves all the flowers. Don't get me wrong. I don't know. He would at least be in the contest. Now switching over to this weekend with him out and Taven Jackson in, I find it extremely intriguing. I think there's a chance if you really look at this glass half full, maybe this is a good thing for Indiana in that there's not as much film on Taven Jackson going against this Washington defense. It's not like Indiana has to run a completely different offense, but it's not going to look the exact same either, where I think Taven Jackson can keep the ball, hurt you with his legs a little bit more. I think they'll simplify the offense down. There won't be quite as many passing attempts in this game. At the same time that it bums me that O'Rourke's out, I am very interested to see what Taven Jackson looks like.
Well, I can tell you what, he looked damn good in the second half against Nebraska that he played the entire half. It was a 28-0 performance. Indiana did not miss a beat, and that included some extremely nice throws, specifically the one to Elijah Surratt when in that end zone. I mean, that was just a whoop.
For sure. I just like what I keep picturing in my head is Rourke absolutely hitting those BBs shoulder throws multiple times in the first half. Like the placement,
that's the difference maker,
and efficiency of which Indiana was running that offense all year, but you know, focusing on against Nebraska. I would have to see Taven Jackson do that and keep the trains on time as much as Rourke has in the past. Like that's the one thing that would make me a little bit nervous if I'm a Hoosier fan.
When Ohio State and Penn State play for Indiana's college football playoff hopes, would it be better for Ohio State to win that game or to lose and take a second loss?
That's a really good question. In all honesty, I don't know if it makes that much of a difference. I think you would have a hard time keeping Ohio State out either way. I would say if Indy.
So does the Big Ten get 4 teams in then? If Indiana's 11-1 with their only loss to Ohio State,
why not? Let's say this. So you know, you just kind of actually somewhat answered the question. I guess I would say Ohio State, because let's say Ohio State, Indiana both wind up going 11-1, but Ohio State has the win over the Hoosiers. Okay, if it's a good game, right? It's just some capacity, 34-27. You know, that is going to bode well for the Hoosiers in and of itself, even if they don't get the win. That could be one of those anomalies where if a couple teams in front of them lose, even if Indiana loses as well, they might actually garner more respect in people's eyes in a close loss than they are in some of these blowout wins. That's how ridiculous it is sometimes with the blue blood worship. So I would say I would want Ohio State to keep winning. Obviously, the most important thing is that Indiana keeps winning, but if they can just be close to Ohio State, I don't know how you keep the Hoosiers out at 11-1 at that point.
I wouldn't. Well, I'm sure that there will be a rule change if Ohio State happens to lose a game, that the Big Ten will change the rule.
Well, I mean, the only games I can really see Ohio State.
India, just go back to the COVID year and then the Oregon situation.
Yeah,
Ohio State loses, they make a rule change.
I'm not poo-pooing it. I want to be clear. I'm not poo-pooing it. It seems like the most likely scenario is that Oregon finishes 12-0, Ohio State finishes 11-1, Indiana finishes 11-1, and Penn State finishes 11-1. I'm not guaranteeing that's happening, okay? But in this scenario, I have Ohio State beating Indiana and Penn State and Michigan, because I don't think Michigan poses a big threat at this point. All 4 of those teams get in. All 4 of those teams get in. You're not keeping any 4 of those Big Ten teams out. The Big Ten carries too much of a big stick in this scenario, and I think all 4 teams get in. So if I'm a Hoosier fan, other than obviously going 12-0, 13-0, 12-1, because they get to the Big Ten championship, other than those scenarios, that's what I would be rooting for, because I think you're in at that point.
Well, let's don't over or underestimate Indiana as well, because Kurt Signetti did say last year when he was first hired at the I forget what the Big Ten championship game. He said,
Right.
Yeah, I just thought I'd come up and get used to the place since we're going to be playing in this next year. If they end up playing in that game, I mean, he should just walk off.
Has a coach ever had a statue built for him
in year
before
1
he was done with his first calendar year on the job? Like it would actually be in the conversation, I think, at that point.
And it's amazing that Indiana's done this. Everybody talks about their transfers, but their transfers are all mid-major guys. I use this stat all the time. They've got 44 guys on the roster that had 0 stars coming out of high school. I didn't know there was such a thing, that you could have that many players with 0 stars. But it's also, this is looming large for recruiting for Indiana now. This is going to completely change the trajectory of their recruiting from any time in the history of this program. They've never had a 5-star, Greek. Never, not one. That I think that changes pretty damn soon, obviously, but the talent level is going to ratchet up.
I would maybe tamper your expectations just a tad. You typically see the recruiting bump the next year. A lot of these recruits are embedded with their teams. I'm not saying you won't switch a couple. Don't get me wrong. If there's a couple decent recruits that were, maybe committed down the road, West Lafayette, those would definitely be up for grabs. Some of those 3-star recruits and stuff like that. But if you will see a bump, if Siggy can keep this going even close to it next year, then you would see a huge bump in recruiting.
Absolutely. But also there's a reason why they have 44 players on this team that had no stars. It's about fit. He wants the players that he wants.
No doubt.
Not necessarily a player that has a big name or a big 4 stars next to him.
And can I add this? Because I agree. Everybody talks about the influx of talent that he brought in with him from James Madison. What I would contend is just as big of a deal is that he brought in enough guys that could tell the other guys on the roster, this is how coach does things. These are the expectations. He basically brought, whatever it was, a dozen guys over from James Madison. There are basically a dozen assistant coaches that they brought in to help get his message through into the locker room when the coaches aren't around, when the players are hanging out at their apartments, at nights and weekends. Like, I think bringing those new players in, doing that's been just as big as the talent influx.
Absolutely. Let's see. Let's look at where'd my schedule go? I just had it up here. Here we go. Okay. There's Michigan State at Michigan. Michigan, man. Michigan State's playing better, but can they go into the big house and get a win?
Yes, I don't see why not. My podcast partner is a Michigan man. He picked Michigan State to win. I think it made him want to puke in his mouth, but he's trying to look at this as honestly as he can. And, as an Iowa fan, what Michigan State looked like coming out of that idle week was a team that was ready to turn the corner. Jonathan Smith is a great coach. He has got them ahead of schedule. If most people that follow this sport are just absolutely in love with the quarterback position. It starts and ends, almost completely at the quarterback position. If that's the case, Michigan State has a huge leg up if you compare Aiden Childs to whatever Michigan is rolling out there at quarterback. So that alone should give Michigan a chance. My guess is it's going to be a kind of a topsy-turvy wild type of game. It usually is when these two teams get together, big rivals and whatnot. So that is a excellent game this weekend.
Here's a unique one. Okay. It is Maryland at Minnesota.
Yes.
Jekyll and Hyde is, I guess, what I would say. Billy Edwards Jr., Maryland's quarterback, is thrown for the most yards in the Big Ten this year with over 2,100. And they're coming off of a win over USC after trailing like 2 touchdowns at the half. So they've got things kind of rolling, but they traveled to Minnesota, who has been a similar team.
100%. Yeah. I mean, to try to figure out these teams week to week has been nearly impossible. I have talked on the podcast for the last couple weeks now. Jordan and I have both talked about how a team that you swear over the last 2 weeks, and you feel that that's the team that's going to show up in the next game, the game kicks off and it's a completely different team. Both times. Maryland has been a different team 1 week to the other the entire year. What do I expect from Maryland this weekend? I have absolutely no idea. Billy Edwards, though, as you brought up, he deserves way more respect and people just flat out talking about him than what he gets. I don't know how he's doing it behind that offensive line. It's incredible. We joked on the podcast, if he had a great offensive line to work behind, I think it might weird him out. He wouldn't even know how a clean pocket feels. Like, I think it would feel so foreign to him. For him to be able to get done what he's got done with basically no running attack, it's incredible.
Absolutely. Let's see. Northwestern at your Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa was a team that I couldn't get a handle on early, which I'm sure a lot of people felt that way. But then they go and they put a bunch of points on this Washington team that Indiana, as a matter of fact, Washington's last game was that 40-16 loss they gave up. And so not that Iowa does not have a good offense, but they're mainly more running than passing, I would think.
Oh, yeah.
So
100%.
That's why I just don't think that Washington can slow Indiana down. But anyway, Northwestern is they've been okay, but not enough, man. Iowa is just too much for them.
I hope so, but again, back to what we're just talking about. I can't trust my eyeballs anymore, Jim. If you listen to the latest podcast, I basically give you exactly my thoughts on what I'm seeing. And for any Seinfeld fans out there, I George Costanza opposite. That's how I made my picks this week. I told you exactly what I think is going to happen and how the game's going to look. And then I went opposite because that's essentially what's been happening with these games. So you would think the Iowa Northwestern game would be 6-3 at halftime and 17 to 9 or something like that for the final score. I have that's what you would expect. Probably it'll be a points explosion, in some capacity. But one would think Iowa would wear them down, but I don't know. I don't know what to expect anymore. How much the Iowa defense struggled in the last game versus Michigan State has got me spooked. And as far as Washington, what's interesting is they traveled all the way to Iowa, early kickoff, Iowa got handled them, fly back home for their idle week, back into the middle part of the country for another 11 o'clock noon, 9 o'clock a.m. their time kickoff. Is that a factor? We'll see.
Rutgers travels across the country, literally the longest trip in the Big Ten to go play USC, and they play at like 2 a.m. No, it's 11 o'clock at night our time, but it's right. I'm like, wow. USC, by far the most disappointing team in the Big Ten and one of in college football.
It's either them or Michigan. Now, here's the crazy thing about USC.
I didn't expect anything from Michigan. I'll be honest with you.
That's fair. I didn't know if I expected a ton from USC either. I had USC at 7-5, got absolutely torched by Trojan fans calling me an idiot. They're a little bit more silent in sunny California on that one right now. What's crazy, though, about USC, Jim, in each one of their 4 losses, if you do the ESPN win percentage thing, that they do where they give you a win percentage, they were in the 90% win percentage in every single one of those games at one point in the game. They are literally snagging defeat from the jaws of victory when it comes to how these games have looked. How? Turning the ball over. They have turned the ball over like crazy. They just constantly give it over. We'll see. Versus Rutgers. The issue is with Rutgers, they're just as cold as USC and need a win just as bad as USC. Now they got to not only travel all the way across the country to get it, it's got to be so late on the Eastern time zone. Like my podcast partner said, I usually break down how many games we have on Friday and Saturday. And he joked and said, basically all these games are on Saturday by the time they get over. I mean, most of that game on the East Coast will be technically on Saturday. It's kind of nuts. I know it's because of baseball. I just don't understand why they couldn't switch it to FS1 and just have this thing at, 5 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Central Time. It just seems stupid.
I don't think this is going to be a good game, but but it's just interesting. I'm interested to see what Ohio State does with Nebraska.
Nebraska is struggling right now. I mean, did you just flat out expose them, meaning the Hoosiers last week? We talked on the podcast, and you start breaking down what Indiana did to Ohio or to Nebraska. You know what it reminded me of? What Ohio State does to teams. Meaning, I'm comparing Ohio State and Indiana and the similarities.
To Indiana in the past.
Similarities. But going into that, as I'm sure you and your listeners know, Nebraska hadn't given up a rushing touchdown the entire year. You rip them apart for 5 rushing touchdowns in that game.
First drive.
Insane. For first drive, boom. Now you play an Ohio State team, second week in a row. Nebraska has to go on the road. Now you go into the Horseshoe to play that Chip Kelly double-headed monster they have at running back. Oh, by the way, they got some pretty good wide receivers to throw the ball. Long story short, again, it looks so similar to how Indiana attacked them is how Ohio State can attack them. I got to think Ryan Day and they're kind of frothing at the mouth, especially sitting on an idle week after the Oregon game to, they're going to want to attack Nebraska in this game. That's what one would expect.
Illinois goes to Oregon. I just don't think Illinois has enough there, but I think that could be a good game.
We'll see. I think in order for that to be a good game, it's going to take 2 things. Illinois in big games this year has forced turnovers, and we're talking like opportune times they have got turnovers. We're going to have to see that. Then we have Luke Altmaier is the quarterback for Illinois, and we've got nicknames out there. We call him Lukey Legs when he's running the ball. We call him Nuke Altmaier when he's throwing the ball down the field. We joked on the podcast he's going to Nuke Lelouch. He's going to have to be Nukey Legs, meaning he's going to have to run the ball. He's going to have to throw the ball. It's going to take a complete effort from Altmaier to pull out that upset.
And then, of course, Washington at Indiana with their backup quarterback, Taven Jackson. I think that they do have one of the best pass defenses in the conference. So that is something that has to be watched. Taven Jackson getting the start, but he has an offensive line in front of him that he did not have last year. He has coaching that he did not have last year, and a mentor, a tutelage under Curtis Rourke that he did not have last year.
For sure. And obviously Siggy and the coach is coming in. You just can't compare any of these guys on the Hoosier team last year to what you see this year. It's obviously a completely different situation now. What I would tell Indiana fans with regards to Washington is their offensive line, not good. Okay. It's one of the worst offensive lines in the Big Ten, in my opinion, which is ironic because this is one of the best quarterbacks, best wide receiver tandems, and best running backs in the Big Ten. If their quarterback has time, Will Rogers, if he has time, he can get the ball out and accurately to their quarterbacks or to the wide receivers. Giles Jackson and Denzel Boston are really good. Jonah Coleman is the running back. I'm telling you, he is one of the more physical downhill running backs in the Big Ten. I do see points on the board for Washington in this game. Can Indiana outscore them? That's what it's going to be. And you can on this defense. Now, part of the reason they have such a good pass defense is because, in my opinion, teams have done a pretty good job running the ball on them. Your passing defense or stats tend to look better as teams can run on you, because I don't think the front seven of Washington has been awesome either. So it is so intriguing to me. I would love it. The number one room that I would like to be in this week across all the Big Ten to know what the game plan would be the Indiana offensive room, to see what the offensive coaches want to do to attack this Washington defense with Taven Jackson at quarterback. It's going to be so intriguing to watch right away at the beginning part of this game.
Well, one thing I do believe is that with Taven in there, it gives them one additional facet to this offense, and
Agree.
that is the fact that he runs the ball, where Curtis Rourke is a pocket passer. He can extend it if has to, but
Right.
there are without question going to be specific quarterback run plays.
No doubt.
And he's very athletic.
Yeah, with Rourke, it's a throw first and then run. With Taven, it's a run first, then throw. But you can run the same RPO offense with two different style quarterbacks. So there could be a situation where Rourke was doing a really good job with the RPOs, throwing the ball. If this is what's on film, it puts Washington in a tough spot in that same exact play can be ran, except Taven Jackson takes off with the ball. That's why, it's such an intriguing part of this game and how the Hoosier coaches are going to attack it.
Yeah, that's the one great thing. Another thing I've got to give a shout out to those coordinators for the Hoosiers. Their game plan is game by game, literally. And defensively, they're the 7th best defense in the country, 2nd best in the Big Ten. The number 1 scoring offense in the country, not just the Big Ten. It's crazy. But there are other games as well, and you're big on getting some good picks out. And what are some of the other games that have your interest this week?
The games I have the interest in are essentially the Big Ten games, and then whenever I have time to actually look at the other games, which with my work and personal schedule with my wife and kids, it has not been much. So I'll be honest with you, Jim. You get me out of the Big Ten, I fall apart here pretty quick.
Well, and there's no reason to step out of it much, because that's where the focus has to be. Because if whomever is going to get to the college football playoffs, the path goes through the Big Ten. It's going to be very interesting to see.
That's what's awesome. That's what's interesting is I think before the season started, everybody's predicting a 12-0 and a bunch of 11-1 teams in the SEC, and just a couple, 12-0, 10-2, maybe not, whatever team in the Big Ten. It's reversed. The Big Ten has more of the elite teams at the top of the rankings, whereas with the SEC, they have cannibalized themselves more. On top of the fact that I don't think there is a truly elite team in the SEC this year. If I had to choose, obviously I would choose Georgia after what they just did to Texas, but Georgia, Texas, it really starts to fall off after that. Alabama hasn't looked good all year, gets beat by Vanderbilt. I mean, when you're getting beat by Vanderbilt, there's obviously some things going on. Vanderbilt's improved, don't get me wrong, but it could be interesting. Will the Big Ten wind up getting more teams in the college football playoff than the SEC? Might happen. It's at least not crazy to talk about, here at this point in the season.
Yeah, it is. And it's going to be fun and Gritty enjoys when you're on. We all enjoy when you're on. This needs to be
why?
Yeah, we need
Gritty's
to
good stuff too.
Finish every Friday with a double dose of Jeffrey the Greek. So as we get closer to the end of this season now, I've talked about this a lot, Greek. I absolutely love what college football has become. And you have to give credit to the transfer portal. I hate the multiple transfer thing. I've seen everybody wants to get that cleaned up. Coaches, former players, fans. Nobody likes the multiple transfer thing. But the transfer portal has made college football unfreaking believable. You don't have an Indiana without the transfer portal. You don't have a lot of these other teams without the transfer portal. But it's also brought so much parity to this sport. Vanderbilt beat Alabama. Gee whiz. That's impossible. Indiana is heading toward the college football playoff spot. Impossible. But I love it.
I can't deny it. Certainly, I feel like I need to call myself out in that some of the things I've complained about, college football playoffs, transfer portal, has at least added to a broader amount of teams that we can discuss that are in the running for special things happening because, again, of the transfer portal and the college football playoffs. I would even say this, something that it's just slowly come about as the year has gone on. You suddenly look and you're like, any other year, right, Jim? Any other year, we had 2, maybe 3 teams that were leaps and bounds over anybody team, 4 through 25. This year in the college football playoffs, I'm not so sure if team 9 can't beat team 1 or 2. I really honestly think that's the case. We can realistically talk about a 11-1 Indiana team hosting a college football playoff game, a number 8 ranked Indiana team having a home game against a team from the South, a 10-2 SEC team. That's insane to think that is very realistic.
Well, man, it is going to be another great weekend. College game day. I have not been around that experience. As soon as we're done here, I've got a presser with Mike Whitson, the basketball coach, but then head out to game day and interviews with the game day guys and to see what all that they've got going on. Was out for Big Noon Kickoff last week, which was huge, but this is going to be twice as big. I don't know where the hell they're going to put the Pat McAfee kick thing because where they're doing this, I'm like, there's no flat grass.
They figure it out. That. They always figure it out. Yeah, they figure it out.
And Pat McAfee is, first of all, I love what he brings to that thing. He is just great for college football. He's hilarious. I can already see some of the things he's going to be doing. He'll have the Hoosier fans go on and he'll just in the middle of nothing for no reason just go Purdue, and you're going to hear the following word. Yeah. Or he's so good at what he does. And then the homecoming for Lee Corso. Lee Corso, the icon of that great program for 37 years. He coached the 1979 Holiday Bowl team that won the Holiday Bowl for Indiana Greek. They beat undefeated BYU, shocking them. That was Indiana's first bowl win. So great homecoming for him. You got Kyle Schwarber that's going to be in the house. It's going to be you had Mellencamp last week dropping the F-bomb on national TV. So it's crazy in Bloomington right now.
I just hope somebody lets Lee Corso know that he's going to be in Indiana once he gets here tonight or tomorrow. If there's any Hoosier fans that are going, get there early. I've been to one game day when it was in Iowa City. It was at the Quad. That's on campus, really not that close to Kinnick Stadium at all. So they'll put that thing wherever they think they need to see fit to get everything squeezed in that they want. If you're going tomorrow morning, especially with 11 o'clock kickoff, you better get up early. I can assure you this. It's going to be dark when you get up and get there. If you think you're going to be on TV or right in the middle of it, it's a tough show to get into.
Oh, yeah. And again, this is a tighter space than what a lot of theirs have been because it's going to run right between 17th Street, which is the stadium is on 17th and I guess that's Indiana right there, but it's between 17th Street and the stadium itself, which there's a plaza area. So it's going to have to be a little wider than it is deep.
So I would assume typically people that tailgate and park there, they're going to have to find somewhere else to go.
No, not that area. That's good thing is that's not, they have something called B-Town Boulevard there now, which has been moved out for this week. But man, I'm looking forward to it. I cannot thank you enough as always. It is an absolute blast to finish the week with the Greek. Man, I just came up with your new tagline.
That's pretty good.
Finish your week with the Greek. Man, poet and didn't know it. Well, brother, I thank you guys. Make sure you tune in to their Eyes on Big podcast as well with Big Kurt. When does that have a regular gathering?
Pretty much it's with Big Kurt, definitely still a part. My guy JW Eggleston Jordan, he's actually who I record with this year, but we pretty much release it every Wednesday evening and Sunday evening. We do a preview and a post view of every Big Ten game. We talk about every team. So always looking for new listeners. Check us out.
Still waiting for my invite.
We'll get you out sometime, Jim.
I'm kidding. Hey, man, I love it when you're on. Big thanks, as always. Everybody loves it as well. Appreciate you, brother. Look forward to it next week. Quick paved drain. Give me a real quick on paved drain. Let the people know.
Yep, paved drain is a permeable surface, so it's often used in parking lots for any designers out there. But for any of your listeners, you can use it in your driveway if you have any hardcover issues that you need to get under. Perhaps if you're building on or near a lake, and then even more fun, maybe next week we'll get the paved drain heated logo. We'll get the paved drain heated logo on there, and we can talk about how easy you can turn your driveway into a permeable heated surface. So those winters and the snow accumulating will be a thing of the past.
Boy, you guys must be around a lot of those northern folk.
Northern folk that are looking for a new driveway. Yes, they're some of our favorite people.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, just go to pavedrain.com. Big thanks. Thanks a lot, brother. I appreciate you.
Have a good weekend.
You betcha. Jeffrey the Greek joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and it has been a fun day here. Jeff Mercer, unfortunately, not able to join us. I think he was having some technical difficulties. We had a couple of guys that weren't able to either, but it doesn't matter. We have got a fun rest of the weekend coming up. Don't forget the Indiana football post-game show tomorrow following the game. Brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company with special guest. I have not announced this yet. Xander Diamont. Remember him, the hero from back in the day over game against Ohio State, man. He was the least likely hero. The Oak and Bucket win. You've got the picture with him smoking the cigar and whatnot. But looking forward to having Xander Diamont on tomorrow. Until then, I am Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.